Well, we are switching our gears right now and moving our cameras on our discussion to the LA sex assault trial of disgraced Hollywood movie producer Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein, as you know, was sentenced to 23 years in prison in New York for sex assault conviction in New York in 2020. But recently, the High Court here in New York, where I'm now seated, has granted him the ability to take an appeal to them about mistakes he contends the judge made. However, he is now in day 4 of a trial out in Los Angeles for a number of other sex assault charges spanning from 2004 to 2013. But to break down how this trial is progressing is our own Meghann Cuniff, who's on this phone outside the courthouse to talk about the trial and what has gone on. But before she does, I just want to disclose to you, I was consulted by one of the teams in the New York case for Harvey Weinstein about an opinion on an issue. I did not enter an appearance for him. Also, I happen to know Alan Jackson, one of the attorneys for Harvey Weinstein, having tried the first Phil Spector case that ended in a hung jury against Mr. Jackson. With that, Meghann, what's happening? Tell us all.
Yes, we've got the limousine driver for Harvey Weinstein on the stand this morning, and really this is the first chance that jurors are hearing from other witnesses in the case. They have spent the last two solid days hearing from Jane Doe 1, the first accuser charged in the indictment, who is a Italian model of Russian descent, and she is described in pretty halting, dramatic testimony an attack at a hotel in 2013. She had come to Los Angeles for the Italia Film Festival, a pretty major event, and she had met Weinstein before, but she also saw him at a VIP event that night, and she alleges that he basically just showed up at her hotel room, and she was surprised that he knew where her hotel was. She was staying under a false name, but the hotel called her, and then he showed up at her door and attacked her. She really described it in emotional terms. It really set the tone for the first day of the trial, because it actually ended early because she was overcome on the stand. She was sobbing, and it became pretty clear that she wouldn't be able to continue. So the judge called it for the day. But she's been withstanding some pretty tough cross-examination from Alan Jackson. Harvey's lawyers are definitely taking an aggressive stance here, and Alan Jackson has made it clear that he thinks these women are lying.
Yeah. Talk to me about how the jury is reacting, what they're consistent of, how Harvey Weinstein looks, and this aggressive nature, where I mentioned before we took our break, Meghann, about one of the attorneys for Harvey Weinstein calling one of the victims, the now wife of the governor, another bimbo if she hadn't married the governor. Talk to me about this aggressive nature of what's going on in this courtroom here.
Yeah, my first impression, and of course we'll never be told the answer to this question, but I wondered to myself if Harvey told his lawyers he doesn't think his New York attorneys were aggressive enough, because they're being very aggressive in there, and they're basically no holds barred. I mean, the cross-examination is going to be vicious when the lawyer basically warns the jury in his opening it's going to be vicious, and then even takes it upon himself to tell them that being on a jury precludes them from being offended by any questions that attorneys ask, which I thought was interesting. I thought in some cases it might warrant a curative jury instruction from the other side, just the fact that he said that. But he's taken a very aggressive stance, and I think a lot of people were really taken aback by his use of the word bimbo in court. What he said could have been as effective, and he could have gotten his point across if he'd used the word bimbo, or if he'd used the word woman instead of bimbo. He said, Gavin Newsom's wife would be just another bimbo who slept with Harvey Weinstein, basically, if she wasn't the governor, which I also took as a pejorative to the other women in the case. I mean, that is basically a statement calling the other victims a bimbo, but saying Gavin Newsom's wife isn't a bimbo, certainly just because she's Gavin Newsom's wife. I think a lot of people were really taken aback by that, and it really set the tone for kind of the no-holds-barred approach that Harvey's lawyers are taking. And by the way, Harvey looks terrible. I mean, I think people were really shocked by his appearance at the New York trial with his face and in the walker and everything. And of course, he's been in custody since the conviction, but I was taken aback by just how pale he is. And of course, I mean, he's not getting a lot of beach time and sun time in jail, but he just looks way more pale and way worse than other people are who've been in jail as long as he has.
And the jury, how's their reaction?
The jury is certainly withstanding a lot. They're a diverse bunch in age and ethnicity. And the pool reporter even commented in his pool report yesterday that one of them was visibly annoyed at Alan Jackson's cross of the victim, that Alan was really, playing word games and focusing on, different words here and there to try to make the argument that she had changed her story with detectives. And the reporter said one of the jurors clearly just was getting annoyed with it. They do not appreciate this kind of tone that the prosecution or the defense seems to be taking, but it's also still so early in the trial. I mean, we still have 3 other women that we're going to be hearing from.
Yeah, and how does this case play into the fact there is an appeal for the conviction in New York, if you know?
I think everyone tries to talk about this case, especially the prosecutors, as if the New York case doesn't exist. I mean, on the surface, the New York cases are relevant to this, but I also think people understand the importance of this case if the New York conviction, for some reason, gets thrown out. That's, obviously relevant here. They'll be able to keep this case, hopefully through the appellate system. They hope. But Weinstein's lawyers have pointed out some errors and some problems in the trial that they think could be an issue upon conviction. So the judge is really having to juggle a lot of things here.
So, Meghann, is there anything else you want to talk to us about that I haven't asked you? Because I'm sure it's fascinating in that courtroom.
Yeah, one thing that was really interesting to the reporters in the opening statement, we all noticed that this has been presented as 5 victims in 11 charges for the whole time. That was the indictment announcement. That's what all the trial previews have been about. But we only heard 4 victims mentioned in the prosecution's opening statement, and now it's only 8 charges that Weinstein is facing in this trial. And there hasn't been a public explanation for why the other victim was dropped. But, I mean, it seems like the only explanation could be that she backed out of testifying, that she, got cold feet, probably with all the hype and all the trial coverage that was starting. She just didn't want to go through with it. We haven't heard anything like that, but I just can't imagine why we would have a last-minute dropping of a victim in charges like that. It's been pretty interesting.